So this guy says, do you seriously believe Philipp Lahm is better than Dani Carvajal? Not a single right back was or is as good as Carvajal. You can't even make an argument against him because he has the ability, the trophy, and the iconic moments to back it. When we're really talking about all-time great players, you really have to separate best versus greatest, right? I think we can all agree on that. Let's speak about the best. And when it comes to the best, you have to look at them purely as footballers. Accomplishments, achievements, that all goes out the window. Let's just analyze them as players. Dani Carvajal, first and foremost, is one of the more understated players of his generation. Make no mistake about it. When you play over a decade, or at this point, damn near a decade for a club like Real Madrid, and not just play for them, but start for them and almost uncontestedly keep their position in the team for a decade, you are a great player. Real Madrid doesn't keep pensioners around. The minute Real Madrid sniffs blood at a position and sees a player is no longer up to the standard, whether they're declining physically, whether their powers are waning, whether their ability is no longer the same, Real Madrid replace you just like that with someone fitter, fresher, younger, better. So for Dani Carvajal to be entering what is going to be his 11th season as a starter for Real Madrid, it deserves massive plaudits. And Dani Carvajal is an excellent fullback. Excellent. Both sides as well, too, which you don't see often, right? A lot of great fullbacks you watch, they're typically much better at one side of the game than they are the other. Namely, Marcelo, who is an exceptional forward-thinking fullback. On the ball, maybe the most gifted fullback I've ever seen. Defensively, though, you could always get at Marcelo. And I know a lot of Real Madrid fans try and tell me that Marcelo, he's better defensively than you think. Marcelo, defensively, was a weakness. Or you have a guy like Wan-Bissaka, for example. One of the best 1v1 defenders I've ever seen in my life. Going forward, though, a liability. Ashley Cole, similar. Better going forward than Wan-Bissaka, sure, but much better defensively. Carvajal, though, is really a 7 or 8 out of 10 going forward, and a 7 or 8 out of 10 going defensively as well, too. I've seen Carvajal defensively put in some shifts. Good in possession, aggressive, wears his heart on his sleeve, a great representative for Real Madrid. But I'm sorry, like all things, there are levels to this game. And between Philipp Lahm and Dani Carvajal, I believe there are levels. Philipp Lahm is one of the most complete footballers, not just fullbacks, but footballers I have ever seen. Don't believe me? Ask Pep Guardiola. Pep has gone on the record saying Philipp Lahm is the most intelligent player he's ever coached. And I get it. Pep, he stretches the truth. Whether it's talking about Foden as the most talented youngster he's ever seen. I mean, he coached Messi, for God's sake. He doesn't always mean what he says as well, too. Chelsea, they are so good. They play so wide. Come on. We know how Pep is. He stretches the truth. He likes to play with the media. But you have to take everything he says with some merit. And when he says Philipp Lahm is the most intelligent player he's ever coached, he might not be number one, but he's for sure one of them. This is a guy that played at an exceptional level at right back, at left back, and at defensive mid as well, too, towards the end of his career. For me, in the modern game, he is the OG inverted fullback. But don't get it twisted. He is also fully capable of being a high-flying fullback as well, too. Going forward, incredible engine. Great on the ball, exceptional passer, good crosser of the ball too. Defensively, his fundamentals, 9, 10 out of 10. Really smart defender. Almost never caught out of position, athletic, wears his heart on his sleeve, captain. I think Philipp Lahm, bro, you could argue he's the best fullback of the modern era. There's definitely some names in that conversation as well too. But the point is, Philipp Lahm is in that argument. So that's just talking about him as a footballer. Is Carvajal a better fullback than Philipp Lahm? Not for me. Now, let's talk about greatness, because this is also the point that he made as well, too. When I think of greatness, I think multiple things have to be taken into account. Longevity, the eye test, which also goes into how good a player is, resume, international caliber, silverware, all that stuff kind of comes into play. Dani Carvajal, you look at his Champions League trophy cabinet. How many has he won now? 2014, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 21, 22, 23, 24. 6-time Champions League winner. Wow. 6. Hey, you got 6 times as many Champions League trophies as Philipp Lahm. So, hey, we'll give him the advantage in that. We'll take that box. Domestically, in La Liga, he's cleaned up as well, too. He's won his fair share of La Ligas. Not so much international pedigree, which you could say, to be fair, since he's kind of entered the national team, Spain has never been the powerhouse that they were when Arbeloa was their right back or when Sergio Ramos was their right back. We'll give him that. But also, he doesn't have the international pedigree. You can't take that away from him. Longevity, he's got a decade in the game. Impressive. Eye test, I don't think Dani Carvajal is the cleanest right back on the eye. But again, a good right back, Mr. Reliable for me. But when you compare it to Philipp Lahm, Philipp Lahm has won the Champions League. Philipp Lahm has won numerous Bundesliga titles, numerous as a club captain as well too for Bayern. He captained his country to a World Cup win. Not many people can claim that. The longevity as well too, over a decade, being both Germany and Bayern Munich's fullback. On the eye, a better player than Dani Carvajal. And I think too, when you talk about importance to their team, which I think sometimes you have to remember that as well too. Who was more important to their team between Philipp Lahm and Dani Carvajal? For me, it's Philipp Lahm, and I don't think it's especially close. I think his influence, not just on his team, but in football in general. I really believe that the rise of inverted fullbacks that you see in today's modern game, I'm not saying he's the first to ever do it, but in the modern game, I do believe Pep's insistence to invert his fullbacks started once he came across Philipp Lahm. Because when he had Abidal and when he had Dani Alves, those two were high-flying fullbacks, wide and high. Lahm, and to an extent as well to Alaba, were really the first guys that he started inverting to kind of gain a midfield superiority advantage. Carvajal is an old-fashioned right back. And a great one at that. But I do believe when you compare him to someone like Philipp Lahm, there are levels to this game. And it's just like how me and Faisal talk about tables for midfielders, right? We talk about table 1, and table 1 is filled with world-class all-timer players. Table 2 is still filled with great players. I got Gerrard on table 2. I got Scholes at table 2. I got Vieira at table 2. David Silva, Fabregas, those guys are probably all table 2, table 3. Doesn't mean they're bad players. They're all-timers in their position. But table 1 is for la creme de la creme. It's similar to fullbacks. Table 1, you're talking about the likes of Cafu. You're talking about the likes of Marcelo. You're talking about the likes of Philipp Lahm, Dani Alves. I think you could even throw Ashley Cole in there. In terms of the modern game, right? I can't speak on the guys who came before. Carvajal probably slides his way into table 2. And I don't think that's a shame to say. At table 2, you have the likes of Jordi Alba, who again has a great trophy cabinet, great longevity in the game, great resume, great fullback, but he's not table 1. Zambrotta, I put him at table 2 as well too. Zanetti probably considers himself unlucky not to be table 1 as well too. He's got everything. Probably still put him table 2, to be honest with you. Yeah, table 2. I'd probably slide Carvajal there. And I think it's a good list to be on. Are any of those guys scrubs? No. They've won international trophies. They've won a Champions League here or there. They've won their leagues. They're great players. But they're not table 1. And I think that's when you compare a Carvajal to a Philipp Lahm, that's the difference. Carvajal is great. Philipp Lahm is an all-time. And that's the difference for me between Philipp Lahm and Dani Carvajal.